Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. We'll start with our Assistant City Clerk taking a roll call.
The record shall reflect that all members are present.
And Councilmember Contreras will lead us this evening in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any member of the public may address the City Council on agency-related matters that are not on the agenda by using a request to speak card. If you are participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 at this time if you'd like to speak. If there are more than 10 speakers, then we will hear the remainder at the end of the meeting. Do we have any public speakers for oral communications? Mr. White. Mr. White, you're recognized. Did you want to speak at this time? Oh, on D1? No, stick with us for just a second. We'll get right to you. Okay. So we only have one discussion item this evening, our 2024-2026 City Council goals. Our Assistant City Manager, Imelda Huerta, will introduce the item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, we will be presenting on the City Council goals for the next 2 years. As a brief background, biannually, the City Council conducts a goal-setting workshop to determine the city's high-priority goals for the next 2 years, which are then reflected in the operational and capital improvement plan budget. The current 2022 through 2024 goals are homelessness and housing, public safety, fiscal responsibility, a cleaner vista, climate and environmental responsibility, parks and recreation, economic development, and traffic. Continue to improve the flow of traffic for all forms of travel, reduce congestion, and improve our roads and sidewalks. Exhibit 2 in your agenda packet lists these goals with sub-goals, which will be discussed shortly. I would like to now introduce Mr. Mike Letcher from Bridge Group LLC, who will facilitate the 2024 through 2026 City Council Goal-Setting Workshop.
Mayor?
Yes, we do have one public speaker this evening. We do that before you begin.
Oh, absolutely, Mayor.
Mr. White? Sorry, I was pulling up my written copy of last year's goals here. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, council members and fellow residents. My name is Anthony White, and I stand here before you today not only as a candidate for the Vista City Council, but as a concerned resident of Vista of over 10 years who's deeply invested in the future of our city. I commend the council's prioritization of homelessness and housing on the new 2024-2026 goals. These issues are more than agenda items. They are the foundation for the well-being and prosperity of our community. As we navigate the complexities of housing in Vista, I implore the council, please consider the critical need for upward mobility within our housing strategy. Accessible and affordable housing must not only address immediate needs, but also empower residents to progress from renters to homeowners. This is essential for the long-term stability and growth of our city and the well-being of future generations. Therefore, I urge the council to consider the following: incentivize the development of starter homes and consider zoning reforms that encourage diverse housing types from single-family residences to multi-unit dwellings. Please collaborate with local organizations to implement community land trust and cooperative housing models that maintain affordability over the long term, and prioritize the integration of housing developments with essential services and amenities to support a vibrant, interconnected community. My personal journey from overcoming homelessness to a decade-long renter seeking homeownership in Vista gives me firsthand insight into the challenges residents face. The scarcity of affordable buying options force a dilemma: to rent indefinitely or to leave. Unfortunately, this could lead to an exodus of renters and a loss of community stability and diversity. So please, let us work together to ensure the dream of home ownership in Vista remains attainable, not only for the current residents, but for our children and our grandchildren. With thoughtful planning and a commitment to innovation, we can build a Vista that grants with its people that grows with its people, one home at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Letcher?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, City Manager, and Assistant City Manager, really pleased to be here tonight and to work with you on your goals and your sub-goals and updating those items. I have a really short presentation, kind of a background, a little bit on who I am and who I work for. With the Center of Organizational Excellence out of San Diego, but I also have my own firm, Bridge Group, LLC. Background is 35 years in city management, also as an assistant city manager, and I was also a department director. I teach at the University of Arizona as a associate professor in the public administration program, master's of public administration. So that's a little bit about my background. Our goals tonight are to confirm or amend your council goals and your sub-goals, or what I call outcomes. Also, to reach consensus on the sub-goals or outcomes going forward for 25 and 26. So how did we set all of this up? We started with a survey that a number of you on the council completed. I also had Zooms, which were great, with each one of you to talk about any adjustments you wanted to make in the existing goals or sub-goals. And from that, we were able to develop tonight. In a few minutes, I'll put up a sheet that is a facilitation guide that shows the changes that are being recommended based upon not only the survey results, but also my Zooms with you. And so let's talk a little bit about goal setting and strategic planning. And there's a great management author by the name of Peter Senge, and he talks about the paradox of the routine versus managing the horizon. The paradox of the routine is those things that are kind of the routine things we do day to day. If you think about the to-do list that you might have every day, you look at that list and you think, okay, those are things that I've got to do either at work or at home, but they're normally routine items. The time to set aside to actually think strategically and do strategic things in most organizations and with most individuals is pretty limited. And so by intentionally taking the time to do that, like you are this evening, to set the goals for the organization going forward is really important. Tonight we're going to talk about the strategic part of your goals, but there are some of the items in my conversation with you that were operational, and we're going to point those items out that are operational that can be handled by having an agenda item or a work session with the council. So we are going to focus on those strategic items that are those items that are, as Senge says, are for managing your horizon. I want to talk a little bit about the survey that we did with the council. There were a couple of items we asked about your looking at how the council operates. The first one was, do you rely on making decisions using your, from a rational or an emotional standpoint? And all of you, the three that completed said rational, which is good. Are you engaged or disengaged at meetings? You all, as with tonight, all seem to be very engaged. And then we asked, are you informed or uninformed at meetings? And you all indicated that you are informed. One of the things that was interesting in this last one, we asked about the corporate good of the city versus constituent concerns. And there was a little bit of balance more on the part of constituents. This isn't unusual with councils that I survey around the country. Your constituents obviously are very, very important, but the strategic plan focuses your goals that you have now, your strategic goals focus on the corporate good of the city. So that's not, results were not necessarily unusual. So why is all this important? And this is a chart that I'd put in the booklet that I'd sent to you. And this is really important because the level that the council operates at is a level that the organization operates at. And I was in a city, and it's a true story. We had 2 to 3 months of preparation leading up to development of strategic plan. We got into a work session with the council. One of the council members goes, "Why are we here? Why are we at this meeting?" So city manager looks at me, I look at him, and so I on the flip chart, I drew this diagram. And what it is I started out by saying, council's really, you've got to focus on day-to-day. That's important to you. Even though it's a job of the manager, it's important to you. Your constituents at the second level definitely are important to you. On the third level, your meetings like tonight, the governance, how you govern as a council, that's important. Well, guess what? A strategic plan, which is the fourth level, and your goals that you have improves all of those other levels. It sets a standard for improving all of them. And the light bulb went off with the council member. We were then able to move ahead. And so one of the survey questions I asked you was, what's your preference in terms of what's your major focus as a council? And out of that, the responses were really, really good for the three that completed the survey. You said continuous city improvement is important. You said making sure that you are updating your city goals and your sub-goals was important. And then the third one was in reference to your constituents. So all of those were good responses. The next item I asked on your survey was, what would help you support projects that come forward and that the staff recommends? And you mentioned there that one of the things that would help is being more involved early on in the project, which is a good response, more community input. And the third highest was understanding how other communities have looked at this, and how they've, what they've learned, kind of as a best practice. So, why are strategic goals important? One of the things that in the private sector, there is a strong emphasis on time, labor, and how labor is being utilized. Unfortunately, in the public sector, cities, we spend as managers and councils a lot of time on the budget, but then we forget what is the greatest resource in our budget? What is the greatest cost in our budget? Obviously, it's people. And so then the question becomes, how are those people being utilized? Well, in Vista and around the country, not only do they have, they have the day-to-day responsibility of serving the community, they have to respond to you as council members, they have meetings that they have to coordinate. There's a lot of their time that is devoted to the day-to-day responsibilities of running a city. So the question becomes, how do you take that with all of the time that's being devoted to that, carve out a little time to be strategic? And that's where these, having the goals and the sub-goals you have allow you to be strategic, allow staff to spend time on those things that are important. Now, with that being said, you also have to be careful to make sure that that work is balanced and what you're asking them to do can be done within the workforce that you have. The other reason it's important, this is kind of a funny cartoon because without it, and this is not the case in Vista, but if you don't have these goals and sub-goals, it's like, what's the direction we're going in? Well, we're going in any direction. It's not a clear direction from the council, where with the goals and sub-goals, you can speak as a council with one voice. You can speak as a council with one voice, and that's really important. Not only speaking with one voice, you also see with one lens, the future and where you're going to go. So it's a beautiful thing. What I want to do now is I'm going to switch to a facilitation guide, which what we'll do with this is as we walk through these goals and sub-goals, I'm going to be asking, I'll go through the area. We'll start off with housing and homelessness and housing. I'll mention the items that came out of my discussions with you. I'll show, as you can see in A, the amendment that I'm recommending that you consider tonight. And then if we're okay with that, I'll say, kind of ask for nods. If you're okay, we'll move to the next one and so forth and so on. So I also want to say I met with your city leadership yesterday, all the department heads, the city manager, the assistant city manager, and I went through my discussions with you. I also got some additional feedback from them that I'll point out. I do want to say you've got, and it's not just because you're providing me a contract. You've got an excellent staff. I mean, you'd say, I can say I was really pleased. I had a frank conversation with him. I wanted to be sure that what came from my conversations with you as a council were things that were doable and also consistent with direction. The great thing about it is you're on the same sheet of paper, and the priorities, I think, are pretty consistent between you and them. So I was very pleased with that. So let's start out with homelessness and housing. There were two items that I picked up from the conversations with the council. One was expanding the program to the Vista Unified School District. Absolutely a really, really good suggestion. And then there was also a recommendation to add an item F to focus on a new sub-goal to focus on successful implementation of existing programs. So let's talk about that. On the one related to the Vista Unified School District, that's an operational item because we can put that in item D to expand the program. I know the staff has already had some conversations with the school, but that's something that we can follow up with at a subsequent council meeting with a workshop or with an agenda item on it. But that's open for discussion. The second item, you can see we made a change to item sub-goal A, where we said took out continue and just said focus on successful implementation of existing programs to implement, and then the rest of it reads the same. So we added, I think that was a really good add to add in terms of making sure that you successfully implement what you have, not just developing new programs. So that being said, I'll pause. Comments from the council regarding this goal and the recommended changes on the sub-goals.
Okay, and I see you guys have all hit your buttons here. I know probably we're all going to want to talk on each of these items. Is it okay with you if we just go down the dais on these things? And is that all right? And we'll just do that, and then we can come back. We'll be a little informal about this. Start with Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you. Just a quick question for you, Mr. Fletcher. As we're going through this facilitation guide, I see some portions, right? We have the goal as it originally states, and then we have suggested changes. And then at times you have a blue highlighted area. So is the blue highlighted area, or perhaps red on your version, it's blue on mine, is the change that you recommend in that different color? So just for our reference, so you kind of consolidated certain feedback and now you're recommending a certain change. Okay, just for the future items, wanted to understand that. I'm really pleased with where we're at with our goals as they're listed here when it comes to homelessness and housing. And obviously we're continuing to workshop our strategic plan to address homelessness. But when Mike and I met, I did bring up the kind of shift in perspective from implementing our strategic plan to really focusing on the existing programs and kind of taking our homelessness and housing goal back over to our strategic plan. So I wouldn't have anything else to add. I would just encourage us to make sure that sometimes when it comes to goal setting, what I've noticed is a lot of it is even just being able to write down what you're already doing. And I think what staff is really focused on is having really successful implementation of our navigation center, of our new rental assistance program, of all these other programs. So I really want to highlight the successful implementation of existing programs.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love the changes to it. I think implementing the programs that we're working on is definitely something that we need to do as opposed to just throw them out there. One of the things that I wanted to kind of comment on was goal number 2, the marketing of the city's homeless outreach team. I know that for the time we've been on the council, we've been speaking about, we got the cars, we got the stuff. I haven't seen much marketing in the form of like a social media or anything like that, like, hey, reach our hot team at this number, or reach one of our community ambassadors at this number. Just since this is such a big deal, if I had to reach our hot team, I would call Mr. Conley, but not everybody in the city has that opportunity. So from a marketing standpoint, that's been a goal. And I feel like it's kind of when we haven't like hit out of the park. So I just wanted to bring that forward to my council, that I'd like to make sure that that's easier for our businesses to reach in contact, because I get the text messages from the downtown businesses, which I'm sure a lot of you do as well, and something easier for the community to reach. So what are we doing for marketing that to say, hey, this is the team you contact when you have an issue, so that we're not clogging up all of our staff here in-house and navigating the whole phone system when it comes to who's supposed to address what. And that hot team is really our boots on the ground, in reality. So that's just one thing that I kind of wanted to note on this. And also what we're going to do, from long-term housing perspective when it comes to our unsheltered population. We had a speaker earlier about the different types of housings we were going to implement. And I think that the housing services and number of affordable units is definitely another big one we got to work on. Thank you.
If I could, just because we're on that point, I completely agree with your thoughts there. I don't remember us using the word market necessarily, and I'd like to strike the word market and replace that with raise awareness, because I think it's more appropriate. It's not a commercial purpose.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It is an awareness thing we're trying to do. I'm sure we more present it as like a business thing, but I think that's a great idea. And I mean, can we get a billboard with the number on it, or send out an email or text message? Like, it'd be really cool. Thank you.
And I think I would go further and eliminate homeless outreach team, because Mr. Letcher doesn't know this, but our homeless outreach team, when it began, didn't have branding on its vehicles, didn't even have vehicles. And so one of the things that we wanted as a council was for people to see the homeless outreach team active in the community. And I think that could still be encapsulated within, I would change this one to read, raise awareness of the city's response to homelessness, which would be a general, would encapsulate everything that you've said, Councilman.
I just feel like the homeless outreach team in particular was something that I don't want to get rid of that on these goals, because that specific team is what people always talk to me about. Carlsbad has one. Did you know that? I know it because they tell me all the time. Having that homeless outreach team, I really wanted to make sure that they had that team, because who's going to show up in a van to take care of the existing problem right now? So we got a lot of different things to address the homelessness, but that team is who I want to, if they're the strike team per se. If there's a fire with CAL FIRE, they got hot shots. These are our hot shots for our unsheltered population.
I think that's an excellent point. What if we said raise awareness of the city's response to homelessness, including the homelessness outreach team? And did you know that we have a homelessness hotline, which is 760-639-6191,
Fantastic.
AKA Sergio Sauceda's phone number. What's that? Oh, not anymore. Well, who does that ring to now?
Yeah, we'll put a phone number on. You get my point. Is like, who do
answering?
people call other than us? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Thank you.
So I just want to be sure
Ms.
that
Huerta, who's taking the point now for the homelessness hotline?
So currently it's Johanna Neef, who is currently helping with the hotline and homelessness services. We are recruiting to replace Sergio's position.
Good. Well, I think the fact that we have a hotline, I don't know if we need to necessarily include that in the text, but I'd like to see maybe more branding or awareness of that hotline, so that people know that we understand it's a pressing problem, and we've created a phone number dedicated during business hours to receive calls from people that are in need of services, and that we're doing our best as an organization to direct people to those services. So I use that hotline and I give it to people pretty frequently, but maybe a lot of people don't realize that we have it. So that might be a good one to focus on.
Okay. So we've added, I just want to make sure, Mayor and council members, as we move ahead on this, we've added the language change. Does that look okay to the council?
Let's keep going down the line. I apologize. I jumped in. Councilmember Contreras, let's.
Yeah, I almost feel like we can talk about it as one thing, but I do actually like the city's homeless outreach team as one particular thing. And I like your idea of raising awareness of what the city's doing as a response, right, to homelessness. That's a little wordy. I would like to make it more concise if possible. But I think that there's almost an important enough distinction between those two things that I'm okay with having them as separate. The other thing that I wanted to go over under suggested changes and additions, I don't necessarily agree with the language expand programs to Vista Unified School District. I like more expand partnership with Vista Unified School District. It's something I've been asking for a long time, and I want to get more information about what we're doing, what they're doing, and how we can connect the two efforts. Because here we have two different buckets of money from two different agencies. And if we can synergize those efforts, I think that we could locate a lot of folks prior to them becoming in a situation of homelessness, especially when we're looking at children. It's incredibly frustrating that we have so many children in Vista Unified School District that are experiencing housing insecurity. So I just want to be able to link that a little bit more succinct and for it to be reflected as something that we are doing. So that way I can, as a council, we can hold staff accountable to making sure that this is something that we're aware of, what's happening with VUSD, and that the public is aware of that information as well. And I do like this idea of outcome, because a lot of the things that we do when it comes to strategic planning, and it's not just the city, it's any corporate entity, any organization, any government agency, there's a lot of planning, but there's not a lot of follow through on successful implementation, or I should just say implementation. And then the word successful implementation, that means that we're actually reviewing the implementation as it comes forward, right? So there's some kind of review analysis as to whether or not our implementation strategy is producing the outcomes that we want. And I think that's important. That's something that we as a council have been very vocal, right? We want the data, we want this and that. But we can't just be focused on specific numbers, right? Just the data itself. That data has to match up with some kind of successful outcome at the end of the day, or else we're looking at the wrong data, right? So I want to kind of switch into that higher level past just asking for the data. And I love looking at the implementation and then analyzing whether or not that is successful. So that would be it for me.
I think what we should add, maybe even it should be number B or letter B, focus on analysis of data and outcomes. Would you agree with that, based on what you said?
Can you repeat that again?
To make the letter B read, focus on analysis of data and outcomes, which is just a shorthand way of saying what we've been saying all along, which is we really want to focus on the data, and as you just said, not just the data, but also analysis of that data that's relevant to the council.
Yeah, but I think implementation is a key word. And I don't want to lose that key word, implementation.
Is there a way to work that in that?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm just for a point of clarification, because I want to go back to the council member, your first statement regarding the adding the partnership with the Vista Unified School District, and we have a D that says expanding programs. And what I picked up from you was adding. You actually want a specific reference to the school.
That's something that I would be highly in favor of, and I've been asking for that type of focus for a very long time.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's something that the whole council is okay with, but I think that it rises to such a high level. Vista Unified touches a lot of the same community as the city, and they have a much closer relationship with families than we do. And I think that there could be a lot more that's done to prevent homelessness if we worked a little bit more in tandem with them. And I don't know what that looks like. That's what, we have our experts in the city and in our staff to figure that out. But yeah.
Excellent. So I just want to check with the council, because before we move, Mayor, we're going to come back to where you're at before we move to that one. Is the council okay with that, having a specific wording of expanding a partnership to the schools? Or do we want to rely on D, which says we're going to expand housing and we're going to expand this program to areas that are needed?
It seems to me that perhaps we want to bring an agenda item back to explore this concept of a partnership with VUSD and what that would look like, maybe even before we add it as a goal. Would we want to have a discussion about what the possibilities are, have a meeting with VUSD on the subject, and ask staff to bring some thoughts on a potential partnership and what that could look like? Are you directing that to me? Yes.
I think in the future, yeah, let's totally talk about it. But I think it's important to have this in our strategic planning for the city. And I would say, I think maybe it might be easier if we revert to the button pressing, because I know that Councilmember Green has something that he wants to say, and so does Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm actually, all the changes that we made, I also want to highlight what you're saying, and that is expanding the partnership, I think, is important with Vista Unified because it does touch every corner of the city of Vista. There are many students and families that are impacted within that community, so I would be in agreement with you on making sure that language exists in our goals. The other thing I wanted to bring up and highlight is just, I believe we set aside $4.5 million for a future potential shelter. So I know the Navigation Center is a great first start, but I would like to add in, if the council would be agreeable, to finding a potential location, whether it's land or an existing building, to create our own shelter in Vista, because it's going to be one of our goals in the future. And we're not setting anything in stone, but to have staff look into it and see if they can bring us back options to create a shelter would be something I'd like to add if the council is agreeable.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you. Beats you too, Councilmember Green. A few suggestions as I'm hearing the discussion. To Councilmember O'Donnell's point, I definitely appreciate you bringing up the, what we're putting away for future shelter services. And when I look at D/E now, expand housing services and increase the number of affordable housing units. Could we make that expand housing, homelessness and housing services? Because it's almost like implied, but let's be clear, especially since this is the homelessness and housing goal. And then with that, I think it would fit well with an item specifically on a location for the shelter. But I would say that location for the shelter and the $4.5 million that we set aside would fit well under D if we include it as part of homelessness services. But I'm okay with, especially since this is such an important goal, being more specific in this area. I think it's worth us putting detail into it, especially since, to Councilmember O'Donnell's point, the $4.5 million that we've set aside for a shelter and the time frame that we have with our current navigation center, it's a time-sensitive goal. So trying to find a location for the shelter for the future is a time-sensitive goal, and we do this every year. I would definitely be supportive of having this down here. My other suggestion, I'm supportive of partnerships with Vista Unified School District, but I would want the goal to be to really lead with what the city has control over. And I think it would even be worthwhile to make a separate line item here under homelessness and housing that states eliminate childhood homelessness and partner with the Vista Unified School District in this effort. That is a big goal. but I think it's a worthwhile goal if my council is supportive of eliminating childhood homelessness. I think that partnering with VUSD is an important facet to that. And let's see. I think that was my only suggestion. Okay, thanks.
And I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, that last one, was that part of G?
That would be, yes, part of G, what is now G, to start that statement with eliminate childhood homelessness and partner with VUSD. And because eliminating childhood homelessness may include partnership with VUSD, but we have other avenues to that as well.
Councilmember Green.
Did you want it to say and partner with or and expand partnership with? And partner with, that's fine. I don't care, just want to make sure your verbiage is good. One thing I wanted to make sure that we highlight on is with Vista Unified School District, and I know I've heard Councilmember Contreras say it before, they receive grant funding every year from the state and the feds for their compliance with what's called the McKinney Veto Act, and it actually designates which students per se, and I think there was like almost 2,000 at last count, that are actually considered housing insecure. And I don't know if there's a confidentiality issue with that as far as them sharing that information or whatever, but if there's any way that our municipalities could get together, they're already getting that information because it's required for them to get grant funding, and since they already have it in their information, it'd be really cool to figure out maybe the Palomar counseling services that they work with, that's who the school districts use for their counseling, maybe we could partner with them to get that information, but I just know they do already have all of those names, and they renew it every single year so they can get the funding from the state. So it's just already in place, and that's kind of, I think, when we partner with Vista Unified School District, they should be able to really expose those vulnerable members of our community. So I just want to make sure that that particular act is in there because as a PTA parent back in the day, I wasn't happy with the McKinney Veto funding. It's not a lot of funding, and the amount of children that they say were, unsheltered was kind of high. And there was actually a special that ran on 2020, the unsheltered kids of the city of Vista, back in like 06 or something like that. So, but now when we get to that, how they designate it is different. It's multiple families in houses, families living out of cars. And regardless of what their situation is, I think a lot of them are on the verge of homelessness, if not actually currently homeless. So just make sure that that's noted in there so that when we meet with them, we have that information. That is all.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
One more thing I thought of, in regards to B and A, Mayor, you'd mentioned focus on analysis of data. And I think that A almost completely covers that, especially because, if we are to successfully implement our existing programs, we have to have an analysis of data and outcomes. So maybe what we can do to kind of bring A and B together is to focus on successful implementation of existing programs and implement the strategic plan to address homelessness and receive regular updates and modify the plan based on analysis of data, program outcomes, community priorities, legislation, and new funding opportunities. So it really ensures that we are modifying our strategic plan based on current data, analysis of data, program outcomes, and is there anything else we should add there? What should we consider when updating our strategic plan to address homelessness? I think that this mostly covers it. Would you be in support of combining those?
I'm not in support of combining them. I'd like to see it as its own item because we have had so much difficulty and this has been such a bright spot of contention with our service providers. And I want it to be highlight, bold, underline for staff. I think it already is, but we've made painfully clear, and so I think we should make it even more painfully clear that we want competent analysis of the data. We want data. We want apples versus apples data every time. We want a homogenized format for reporting. And this is something that we've not received for 3 years, maybe going on 4 years now. So I think it should be its own item so that we can stress to staff that this is so important that we made it the second bullet point.
Could I respond to that? I totally hear where you're coming from. So I think that the difference is that on item A, we're responding to our strategic plan to address homelessness with data, with community priorities and all this thing. And then item B is improving our, we've had insufficient data, we've had inconsistent data. So maybe we could enhance item B so that rather than focusing on an analysis of data and outcomes, we can perhaps improve the quality of the data or have greater accountability through data or something of the sort. Because I do like to include some sort of means to why we modify our strategic plan as part of item A. And I also appreciate wanting to have better data analysis within homelessness and housing.
So how would you have that read?
I would say maybe improve the quality of data, and I like the use of the word focus, but it might be a little bit ambiguous for staff even.
I'm fine with improve, and I included the word analysis, trying to draw the input from Councilmember Contreras in what she just said.
So maybe improve the quality of our homelessness data.
Or how about, if we move our mouse a little bit there, how about just improve analysis of data and outcomes?
That sounds great.
Great.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council, because we've had a lot of changes here, I think that would be helpful is to kind of start putting closure on this, is to go through these items. I'm going to start with A through E, and I just need a consensus from the council. Are you okay with this, or do we need to delete it, or do we need to change it? Because one of the things I want to emphasize is that these are goals on what you want to achieve. It's a goal. How you're going to implement that, because I'm also hearing from you hows, like, is it going to be improved data? Is it not going to be improved data? How you're going to do that is something that staff's going to do when they start working on it. So what I'd like to do is start with A, go through A through, I guess we're at, H now. And so the first one, A, are we okay with the changes in that area?
Let's do a show of hands if we're okay. We have consensus for A.
Okay, sounds like a winner. B, are we okay with that? C? D? E? F? G? H? Okay,
Looks good.
we're done with that one. Okay,
Anything else on housing and homelessness? Okay, very good.
okay, let's move to the next one. Thank you, Council, Mayor. Public safety. In that area, we had a number of these that we've moved to traffic because they're more related to traffic. There were comments, and we'll get to that one in a minute. We also had a statement from one of the council that was saying that we need to redirect the deputies to traffic control and enforcement. In talking to the Sheriff's Department yesterday, the captain, he indicated that that would be an operational and a budget change because they would need more people. So that's something you may have to consider in the operating budget. The street level safety, we need a little bit more clarification on what was meant by that. I can't, as I mentioned to the council members and the mayor and deputy mayor when I talked to you, I said I wasn't going to take notes on who mentioned what. And so I don't have notes, so I don't know. So if you can kind of let me know who did that, I appreciate it, and we can get clarification. The last one on improving the professional behavioral response that we have in public safety incidences. I can tell you that I got a real great review from your Sheriff's Department on how they respond to incidences where there are issues with behaviors and psychological issues. I'm pretty impressed with what's being done there. What they feel is that, that's more of, if the council wants to add it as a goal, fine, but it's more of an operational issue. They're welcome, they're more than happy to update the council on what they're doing, but that's the point there. So in this particular area, we need clarification on the street level safety, and we need some discussion on this professional behavioral response. The other items have been moved to traffic, which we'll discuss in a few minutes, or when we get to it.
I'll start this one off. I'd like to see bullet point A be improve the number of deputy sheriffs in our city, because in the last 20 years, we've hired 30 new firefighters, but only 4 new deputy sheriffs. So I think we need to improve the number of deputy sheriffs policing the city of Vista. That's very important to me.
Okay?
Deputy Mayor Melendez. I see some buttons pressed, but I thought we'd go once down the line and then maybe we can do the button pressing after everybody has a chance. Is that all right?
Okay, so in regards to Mayor's suggestion of item A, I would just be curious where we're at in our previous goal of establish appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of public safety positions needed. Because I think that would be the priority goal for me, to identify what the personnel response is needed in order to ultimately reduce crime rates. If we're going to increase personnel, I think there needs to be a rubric for doing that. I know in our response to hiring new personnel for our fire department, we did have a lot of data for that. So I would definitely be supportive of continuing with item B, which is establish appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of public safety positions needed. I'm not sure, I know that I've talked about traffic and street level safety when it comes to public safety. I'm not sure if I had a specific conversation about this goal in regards to traffic safety. I'm okay with moving some of these items over to our traffic goal, but I think it would be helpful for us to also include an acknowledgement of our safety concerns when it comes to traffic and infrastructure. And I did write something down for consideration. And that would be for us to consider strategies to improve public safety outcomes, such as programs, infrastructure, and emergency response. And that's, I'll go ahead and read it again. Consider multiple strategies to improve public safety outcomes, including programs, infrastructure, and emergency response. We've definitely seen an improvement in safety when it comes to some of our traffic calming infrastructure that we've implemented over the past several months. Streets that were dealing with rampant property damage and speeding cars are no longer dealing with that because they now have traffic calming in their neighborhood. So I think, again, with goals, a lot of times you're writing down the good things you're already doing. And for this item, happy to have my council workshop it with me, but I like the idea of considering multiple strategies when we're talking about public safety as a whole. And I thought that we were potentially going to have a conversation in the future about like holistic public safety strategies. So maybe this is kind of another prompting for us to have that conversation. And I think it'd be good to know kind of where we're at with some of these other goals too. I know that I had pushed for this item, increase awareness of domestic violence and family crisis issues, but I'd love to know where we're at with the community center as well.
Just one correction, the word improve should be the word increase. And for me, I'd like to see that on a different line with continue to reduce crime rates. Great. Councilmember Green.
Thank you, sir. I like the continue to reduce crime rates as itself. I would say, as far as the ensure or the increased number of deputies, I had ensure or increase adequate public safety staffing as needed. And then I think the next one underneath it was, because I was like, ensure or increase, because I can ensure that I have enough adequate staffing once we've established this appropriate criteria, but it could also mean I need to increase it. So I'm like, hey, we need to either ensure we have an adequate number or increase to an adequate number. So I put ensure or increase adequate public safety staffing. And I think that kind of references. I know you want to increase it every year, like put a standard thing, but I would, that's my recommendation. You can go back after we go down the line here on that and figure that out. The only other thing that I had on this one was the Pursue grant funding. We've been talking about a community center at Luz Duran Park since before our other council members were even here, and we just finally got it to where we've all agreed it's gonna be a community center. But the Pursue grant funding, I would like to either say pursue grant funding or allocate year-end funding to build a community center at Luz Duran Park. Having to wait for grant funding for something that's going to be such a huge resource for our community, in my opinion, is not, I don't want to say it's not cool, but for me, it's not cool. Like, we need to have, we need to be able to identify funding, I guess. So I think that's great verbiage, but either allocate or identify funding for this project, because we've been trying to get the Safe Routes to School project done at Rancho Minerva Middle School for almost 10 years. We've requested grant funding every year, and they keep saying no, and we tell our community we're pursuing grants. It doesn't solve the existing problem. And if we're not going to get funding for it, we either need to identify the funding and start putting it away to fix it, or just do it because it's going to be such a big benefit to our community. So on that, those were my things. When it comes to improving professional response to crisis issues in the community, it's just kind of a question. I didn't put that in my strategic thing for public safety. Were there any particular instances or any type of advice that like what areas, I know what crisis issue did they respond to poorly that they needed to improve behavior? Was there a particular instance that I missed or something? Or was it just hey, in general, we need to be more community service oriented as a policing department? That's a question for you because somebody told you this.
Well, and again, Councilmember, I think that in communities around the country, this is becoming an issue on public safety response, especially when we've got about 47% of our population with mental health issues.
Yeah.
So I think the council person that raised this, it was appropriate to be raised. What I learned from staff yesterday is that is that's something that they operationally, they're already on top of. And not only on top of, I'm pretty familiar with this because at the university I review programs around the country with my students that actually do this type of response. I was really impressed with the points that were made by the captain yesterday on what's being done here in Vista. So it's really a matter, I don't want to mention the council person that mentioned it, but the question is, we can keep it as operational or bring it in as...
No, and I like it as operational. I think that kind of specifies a little bit more because this is more like a crisis intervention, a behavioral health type of issue, a 5150 type of issue is kind of more what it sounds like, and maybe more of a training and professional behavior in those type of situations, and that's fine. I thought it was a specific newsworthy thing that we blew. So I think overall saying that we want to improve training and response, that is an operational thing. I just want to make sure it wasn't something that we needed to actually put in public safety. So thank everybody for their comments on that. We'll see where everybody else is.
Councilmember Contreras.
Okay. Well, the ensure and increase the number of deputy sheriffs in the city, that's very confusing to me. I don't agree with the way that this is written. I think that the establish appropriate criteria, I know, Mike, that you haven't been here for a long time. This is a discussion that we've had every single year because there's some folks on our council that just want to increase the number of sheriffs even when the captain tells us they don't need to. It's just constant, wants to increase. And this is how we got to establish appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of public safety positions needed, which is our sheriff deputies and our firefighters, right? So I just do not agree with A at all. I don't think that needs to be on here. I really appreciate Councilmember Green workshopping the community center at Luz Duran Park. You know, it's one of the things that when the community asks me, hey, what can we do with it? We don't have funding. So right now the city's like, we could tear it down or leave it as is, right? So I really, really appreciate that. I'm curious on increased awareness of domestic violence and family crisis issues. I don't think we ever, prior to this year's allocation of year-end fund balance, I don't know if we directly funded domestic violence programs, but we did in the 17 million or so dollars that we appropriated. So I'm wondering if we need to be a little bit more intentional instead of just increasing awareness, if we need to actually start funding intervention strategies or programs to help folks that are experiencing domestic violence and family crisis issues. So I almost would like to go past increasing awareness and be actionable on that. And I don't know what that looks like. Maybe one of the wordsmiths up here can add to that. But let me see. And I really, really appreciate deputy mayors consider multiple strategies to improve public safety outcomes, including programs, infrastructure, and emergency response. I think it is important when we're talking about public safety to understand that our built environment is part of the public safety issue, right? And so we as a council have been tackling that, looking at traffic calming, speed hump petitions, that kind of stuff. And even though that goes more along the lines of traffic, I do agree with Deputy Mayor that there has to be some kind of capturing that in public safety. So I think that new F is a good way to do so. And I think that's it. That's all for me. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Yeah, I would agree. I think A and B or C now are a little bit redundant. I mean, I've had conversations with the captain, the deputies, the DSA, and I've told all of them the same thing. If you need expanded personnel, if you need extra equipment, if you need training or any other resources, I am always happy to provide them. I support our deputies wholeheartedly because they do a phenomenal job here in the city of Vista. But what I've asked them every single time is if that need ever arises, is that they bring quantitative data to show what the needs are and how we might be able to implement them here in the city. So while I am in full support of exploring those options, and I look forward to a future conversation, I just feel like those two are kind of redundant when we put them separately. So I don't know if I'd be in full agreement with letter A. The other thing I wanted to add, and this might fall under Parks and Recreation when we talk about expanded programs, I 100% agree with the Deputy Mayor that we need to look into more art programs, more cooking classes, just different things for our community to get involved in that we used to have here in Vista that have been removed. And so exploring that and looking at those programs to bring them back, I think would be essential. It could be public safety, it could be Parks and Recreation, it might fall under both. But I think that those things we should be exploring as well as we move forward into our future goals and what our community looks like.
Councilmember, great points. I think that might be something under Parks and Rec that we could, so when we get there, let's consider adding that. So I think we're at a point now where I'm gonna, Mayor, with your.
I got one more thought here on bullet point A, because clearly I'm not seeing a consensus. And I think when we get to the point where we ask if there is consensus, I think what I'm seeing is that a majority of this council does not support increasing the number of deputies that serve our city. And I just want to say that At no time has our sheriff's command told us that they don't think they would benefit from additional policing. This was an issue that you talked about when you ran for office. We're the busiest sheriff's station in the entire county of all the contract cities. I don't know how many people really believe that crime is really on the wane because the numbers keep going down. I think most of my fellow residents in the city believe that crime is reportedly going down because people are so overwhelmed that they've stopped reporting crime and the number of reports being taken are lower. But when we learned that in your district that Walgreens is going to close, did you know that? We're losing yet another drugstore and convenience shopping opportunity in our community because of, and that was a place, that exact store where I saw somebody pack up a whole backpack full of things and just walk out with it. When our deputies have had the time to go and to implement retail theft operations, they've had extraordinary results. They executed a search warrant a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago, where they arrested 2 individuals on felony charges and recovered $200,000 worth of stolen merchandise. Think if we had the resources to adequately police our community. I don't think that being the busiest and our deputies running probably more calls per deputy than any other, and I've asked repeatedly for those numbers, and I'm not happy, frankly, with what I've received from the Sheriff's Department and from staff in terms of quantification. We didn't receive quantification that said they don't need resources. The only thing, and it wasn't our current sheriff's captain, it was a previous captain who came forward and looked at us during this exact conversation and said it was a political decision that the council was elected to make. And, he was right. It's a political decision for each and every one of you to answer the voters in your district whether or not you think the current rates of crime in our community that are literally putting the businesses that serve the people that live in your community out of business, whether you think it's acceptable. I don't think it is. I think that when our population grew from 80,000 people to 100,000 people, and over that period of time that it did, we saw fit to add 30 more firefighters so that the response time when we arrived with the ambulance was appropriate. But we don't prioritize increasing the number of deputy sheriffs such that right now we're well less than one sworn officer per 1,000 residents. Our number is in the bottom half. We are in the bottom half of policing on ratio of sworn officers per 1,000 in the state of California. We can and we should prioritize a safer community. It is a core issue. In fact, public safety is the reason. It's not a reason, it's the reason that local government exists. And this council has not prioritized adequate levels of policing. And when we talk about increasing professionalism, one of the things that would go a long way is if our deputies didn't have 3 calls behind the one that they're on that they have to get to. If they had adequate time to spend providing service to the people that they're standing with rather than knowing that they're needed urgently elsewhere. Our community would benefit from an expansion of the number of deputy sheriffs from, the number that we had 20 years ago, which we've increased by exactly 4. And the one that you all agreed on was adding a motor deputy who would just write tickets. And then we see here a suggestion that says that we should redirect deputies to traffic control. In other words, we should take deputies from other assignments, including gang enforcement, our COPS program, and other vital and patrol, and we should redirect those away from those crime-stopping activities and only to policing traffic. Now, I supported adding a deputy for traffic, and I would support adding more. I believe that general deterrence works when we write tickets and people see us writing tickets. I also believe when people see us arresting people for shoplifting in our community, it makes a difference, and fewer people are likely to shoplift and put our stores out of business. We talked in our, in our economic activity thing, we're going to talk here about creating jobs. We lost over 150. I met last week a gentleman who is a 19-year employee of the Vaughn store, lost his job after 19 years, lost his job at the Vaughn store. When is this council going to treat seriously the working families in our city having access to shopping and having access to jobs because we prioritize and care about law enforcement? Now, I have heard a very tepid response, and I've heard a lot of obfuscation, and I've heard, this business of establish, how to figure out what the appropriate number is. We've asked for information, and all we get back really is we know we're the busiest station. We know that our deputies probably respond to more calls per deputy than any deputy in the county. And I've never heard anybody wearing a star come down here and tell us that we wouldn't benefit. In fact, I know that Captain Boyce, our current captain, has said that we would benefit. And I think if you were to go ask the deputies, as I have, that they would tell you one-on-one that we do need more resources. This is a very important issue. I think it's the most important issue we're going to talk about tonight. And voters are going to remember what each council member's position is on this subject. So I'm asking you to leave bullet point A in place. I've got some buttons punched here. Councilmember Melendez, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think that this is a highly politicized topic. I think it's a very practical conversation. Public safety is one of our largest budgetary items. And to consider increasing the number of deputy sheriffs in the city of Vista with no reference to how many personnel that would be wouldn't be responsible if it were any other department, whether it were the fire department, whether it were any of our other urgent, active departments. So I really appreciate Councilmember Green's inclusion of the words ensure. I was kind of writing down some consensus building notes, and there's a couple of things. It's important for the public to know in this discussion how much money it costs for the personnel that we're describing. A lot of our city goals are more policy related. This is a specific budgetary demand. So City Manager, could you clarify the cost of each personnel that's hired through the contract that we have with the Sheriff's Department?
Sure. The current contract guarantees us a certain number of deputies based on the amount that we pay the sheriffs. If we increase that number, then we increase our cost. The cost per deputy, I'd have to ask the captain. I think it's
$270,000.
yeah, around $250 to $300.
Okay. So between $250,000 and $300,000, around $270 per deputy per year. So it's an ongoing cost. And I am concerned too, Mayor, that you're reporting that you've not received adequate data from San Diego County Sheriffs regarding what a adequate response actually looks like and how to quantify that, because it is such a large budgetary burden to the city. Another thing that I would like to know, I'm very supportive of our sheriff's deputies, and I'm also very supportive of the specialization of our sheriff's deputies. We've seen an incredible benefit to a specialized response from our COPS team. I think that we could do for a more specific response to theft in particular. And that's a different response than the response that we have to domestic violence. So I would be curious and be willing to entertain a conversation about how we ensure adequate public safety personnel, right? But not as a blanket statement of we're going to hire an undetermined amount of deputy sheriffs, but we should consider specialization. We should consider where those personnel would be stationed and what they would be doing. And then, of course, we need to be able to identify, is this going to be an ongoing goal, or is it something where we have an expectation that we want to hire 10 new deputies? How many more deputies do you think is necessary to reduce the crimes that you're describing? I don't think that we have successfully accomplished the item, which is to establish appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of public safety positions needed. We haven't been able to do that. It sounds like, Mayor, you might not believe that we're able to do that we might not be able to establish an appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of personnel. I would like to start there. And if there's no way of identifying how many personnel we need, I don't feel comfortable putting such a large budgetary item on our city goals with no end in sight. That said, I think we should ensure adequate public safety personnel. And maybe one of the ways that we do that is by establishing an appropriate criteria to determine the appropriate number of public safety positions needed. But I would support if item A said, ensure adequate public safety personnel, I would get behind that. But we have to have some sort of reasonable discussion because it's a massive budgetary ask. And I think that we would be able to come to a consensus on, okay, based on, a good response from.
Imelda, could you write a second line on that? Because I'd like to keep that A just like it is. But would you write
He
one that
doesn't
way
want to
she'd like it?
combine it, that's fine. I would say if I could add my own line item for my response to our personnel, it can be B. Okay, he can have A. I'll go ahead and have B. All right. I'll go ahead and add my suggestion, which would be ensure adequate public safety personnel. But to suggest increase the number of deputy sheriffs, when you did reference our recent increase of personnel in our fire department, that was founded on some really significant data findings that the labor organizers of VFFA on their own time brought to us. I don't even think that we need to put the onus on the sheriff's deputies to bring us this information. We could simply, with our council and consensus, direct our city staff to research and to help us identify what is adequate public safety personnel and have city staff come back with a recommendation. And they may very well say we need to increase it, but where do we increase it? Do we increase specialized responses? Do we increase general deputies? Do we increase in our cops team? Do we increase more in our motor deputies? I would love to have more answers to that question. So that's my take on it.
Well, in the 3 deputy sheriffs that I was successful in winning funding for before the motor deputy, I let staff and the sheriff's department determine which detail the new deputy would be assigned to, because I do think that's something that the command staff uniquely is qualified to decide where those resources would be best. But the numbers are very simple. We want numerical information. We have 6 deputies on patrol at night for the whole city, 6 deputies. So the question is whether or not you as council members feel that 6 deputies on patrol in the late shift is appropriate. I don't think it is. And when you talk about the budgetary reasons not to increase policing, I think that diminishes the fact that it is the singularly most important thing that we do as a city. It should be the priority, the first priority of our budgeting. And we're having discussions about sidewalks. We've got about $2 million worth of sidewalks that we're looking at. We've got $750,000 to put a stoplight in that there were no warrants that were met. We've spent now more than $1 million on speed humps. And I think we're on the way probably to budget for the next $1 million. If I look at all of the pet projects that this council has implemented, we're talking decades of policing that we could have afforded for the exact same expenditure. It is a political question. The question is whether you as council people think that the current levels, which are very similar to the levels that were in place 20 years ago, when our population was substantially smaller, was 80% of its current number, are adequate. This is a big issue for our council. I am perfectly aware that there's not a lot of agreement here, but I want to make this known to the people of Vista. I want them to pay attention when they ask, when they see people stealing at the stores and they see no one doing anything about it. When they see people sleeping in the parks who are clearly passed out in a drug coma, and they wonder, why won't someone show up and do something about it? I want them to know who's responsible. It's this council. This council is responsible for making sure that our parks are safe, that our stores are safe, that people can do business in this city, that our families are safe. It's our job. Public safety is our job. We are the ones that decide how many deputy sheriffs will police the city of Vista. And if our sheriff's captain's here and he wants to come down and provide any thoughts on this, I'd love his input. But this is a question, I heard some laughing going on down here. I'm not sure what's funny about it. I don't think it's funny whether or not our stores are closing, whether or not people are safe. Somebody was just killed in Councilmember O'Donnell's district because 2 young men shot him while he was, driving on the road. I got an email today from a gentleman who lives in, I think it might have been, I'm not sure, it might be Councilmember Green's district, who talked about graffiti and the chemicals that are in the air constantly that he is breathing in from spray paint, and the gang graffiti that has become ubiquitous in our city. The question is whether or not we think it's a priority to increase the number, whether you think that 0.84 deputies per 1,000 is a sufficient number. So we'll keep going down the line here, Councilmember O'Donnell.
I'd like to hold my place. The captain has joined us, so if there are questions for him, I think this would be the appropriate time to ask them.
Mr. Mayor, after the captain, because it looks like A and B are the controversy or the discussion items here. What I would suggest is after the captain's comment that we decide if we're going to go with A or B, because it's, there's other items that we need to consider on this, and as opposed to, it's going to be A or it's going to be B or it's going to be nothing.
I'll go with you on that, but I'll leave it up to the purview of the council members to make whatever comments that they feel are appropriate. Is it your position or the position of the Sheriff's Department that we would not benefit from additional policing resources?
Depends on what you're asking for. I know Deputy Mayor touched on like specialized positions, right? So if we're like focusing on youth development, obviously we would probably ask for more personnel in our cops positions so that we can focus on that. If you're looking at overall response times and responding to patrol calls, yeah, Vista's a busy station. There's no doubt about that.
Are we the busiest station in the county?
Yes. Yeah, in the sheriff's jurisdiction.
Is it your opinion, based on your many years as leader in the Sheriff's Department, that the deputies in Vista likely run more calls per deputy than probably any other station?
So I have been working on those numbers. I know you guys requested them, and I have my analyst working on that. It's kind of hard to quantify, so we're looking into that. And I would believe that yes, our deputies, and also you have to realize that fluctuation of staffing, it fluctuates constantly. Vacation, sick time. So that impacts response times and how many deputies we have in the field. On a patrol team, yeah, we have 6 to 7 deputies typically on a patrol team, but then you have to also include our overlap positions. So on night shift, you could have more than 6 or 7 deputies out on the street. So I would never say no to more deputies on our streets. My main focus was getting us up to contractual obligations because we were so short-staffed for a long time. And for the first time ever, in a long time, we are actually fully staffed as far as contract positions go. So that's gonna actually help us be able to quantify do we need more deputies? Because I'll be honest, our deputies they run around and they're tired a lot. They are responding to a lot of calls every day. Like I said, Vista is a busy station. And so adding more deputies to the street, it's healthier for our deputies, it's better for the public, because one of the biggest complaints are, especially for minor calls like noise complaints and or party calls, those are low priority calls, and that seems to be what you all get complaints on every day. Until we boost our manpower, those calls are going to remain a low priority, and response times are going to suffer in those categories.
Do you feel that when deputies have more time to spend with those that they've been called to serve, that they have more of an opportunity to build rapport with them, and that it generally improves the relationship of the public and our law enforcement officers?
So for patrol deputies, they're just putting Band-Aids on things and moving on to next call. That's the reality. Our cops team, they could fulfill that role of spending more time with the community, but they can only satisfy so many people's. But on a daily interaction, our patrol deputies are pretty much on to the next call as soon as they're done.
And we've have a number. We do track the number of officer-initiated enforcement opportunities. I've seen those numbers. So we know that each deputy that's in the field initiates, self-initiates traffic stops and observation of crime. And clearly, with our retail theft operation, if we had more deputies available, we could probably do that more frequently, right?
Sure. So for retail theft, if you're just talking about specialized focus, like that'd be our cops team, which is currently working on that. But obviously, cops isn't there 24/7 like our patrol deputies. So yeah, if we had more patrol deputies on the street, they would respond to those retail theft calls quicker and maybe more efficiently.
Thank you very much, Captain. I still have some buttons punched here. I think Councilmember O'Donnell was next.
I'm going to hold the microphone. However, if Mike would like to go through the remaining balance of...
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like, so that we can move on to if there's discussion on the other sub-objectives, if we can get a council consensus
I'm
on
fine with
A
it.
and
Does
B.
anybody have anything before we
A
go
or
down
B?
the line here and show consensus or not consensus for these items?
No, that's why I was going to hold the microphone so I can come back to the
Okay.
statements that were made.
Then, Mr. Letcher, why don't you proceed with asking for consensus on each item?
So on item A, okay, B, E, we made a change in, F, G, so, okay. On to the next.
We'll just let the record note that we had one in favor of increasing the number of deputy sheriffs and 4 opposed.
So I just want to make my comments prior to moving on to the next
That's
subject.
why we all have
Sure,
our
go
buttons
ahead.
pushed so we can speak.
I do want to just put into context the shooting that the mayor brought up, that it was a road rage shooting, that is a one-off incident, not rampant shootings happening in District 4. So I just don't want to paint it as such. The perpetrators were caught almost immediately after that. So let's just make sure that the whole picture is being shared, not just a sliver of the pie. The second thing I'm going to say is I have never once said I don't support hiring more deputies. So I just want that on the record and be very, very clear about that. What I have stated over and over again, as I stated before, and it is what I ran on, just like you ran on 9% reduction in crime, is that if they need the resources, please bring me the information back. Now, whether staff does that, or deputies do that, or whatever agency brings them to us, I will be open to hiring more deputies. I need the information before we spend $270,000 per deputy. But if that need is there, I will support it. The second thing, when we put in context of the hiring of firefighters, and the deputy mayor more eloquently than I will state, but they brought back over 30 pages of research and information on the needs for 12 new EMTs, 3 BLS ambulances, and why they needed them. They also brought up the fact that we took away an ambulance, so they needed to replace that at some point. So when I am asking for information, it is not my lack of support or desire to keep our community safe. It is not my lack or desire to hire more deputies. It is simply asking for the information that was given to us in prior instances that I was able to vote on. I'm requesting the same information so I can make that decision. So that's all I wanted to say. I just felt like the context of that information needed to be clarified. But I do look forward to a future discussion that we have because I'm sure it will be brought up.
I appreciate that, but we know exactly how many heart attacks happen. We know exactly how many house fires happen. We know exactly how many broken legs happen because those things all get reported. We do not know exactly how many instances of graffiti. We do not know exactly how many robberies. We do not know exactly, a lot of them go unreported in your district. So I don't think it's funny.
We
there's a
actually
lot
do,
of-
we
there's a
actually
lot of
do
gang
know the
crime.
number of graffiti. If you're going to interject after every single thing, I'm going to interject and say I'm bringing a discussion item forward on graffiti, and I'm bringing back 4 years worth of data. We know, so let's
Okay?
just move on.
We have documented a lot of graffiti cases, but we certainly don't have them all documented. My point is, if crimes go unreported, we don't know exactly how many of them happened. So thanks for your desire to interrupt and cut off debate, but that's not your prerogative. I have some other buttons lit up here. Councilmember Green would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to comment on the whole thing about not wanting to hire deputies. I was actually dragged through the mud by our mayor in 2018 for wanting to hire park rangers instead of deputies, and our parks do need to be policed, and I thought 2 park rangers would be a better use of money at that instance than deputy sheriffs, but politically it got turned around to I didn't want to hire sheriff's deputies. So I want to make that really clear is what my initial comment was that A, which is now B, should just be continue to reduce crime rates and ensure an adequate number of public safety personnel. It was just one combo thing. So I see you have it as 2. It's fine having it as 2 now. We already agreed to it, but ensuring we have an adequate number of public safety is our responsibility as elected officials. Hiring a new deputy every year isn't our responsibility, and increasing the deputies isn't our responsibility. Making sure we have adequate is our responsibility. 20 years ago and now, check crime rates and how much better our rate is now than 20 years ago without having to add all those deputies. So I just wanted to mention I'm not going to be spoken at and spoken down to on my stance with deputy sheriffs or sheriff's deputies when all I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm fiscally responsible and ensuring that I have an adequate number of public safety personnel, whether that's a deputy sheriff or a firefighter. So that is my job, and that is where we allocate the majority of our budget to. Our 3 jobs: public safety, infrastructure, business development. And we're all saying we want to ensure that we have adequate public safety. That doesn't mean we don't want to hire deputies. So I just want to make sure that, again, that is for the
I think
record. Have a great
let's
day.
move on to the next item. Which is
If
fiscal
council members
responsibility.
want to be heard, they have the right to be heard. I still have Deputy Mayor Melendez.
'Cause it's-
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mike. You know, I appreciate you guiding us in this discussion. I think it's important for us to be able to kind of workshop these details. I think the other items might go a little bit more smoothly. And I am a huge advocate of public safety in our community. I am also a huge advocate in, as I put on item F, considering multiple strategies to improve public safety outcomes, including programs, infrastructure, and emergency response. Been very grateful for the support from our sheriff's captain on some of the infrastructure improvements that we're doing and the traffic calming that we've been doing. And thank you, Captain Boyce, for giving us a bit of insight into what the current need is in terms of personnel. I am looking forward to seeing the data that we have. I am supportive of ensuring that we have an adequate number of public safety personnel. I think that adequate is going to be the word of the debate, right? What does it mean for us to have adequate public safety personnel? And I really think that it's interesting you're bringing up underreported crimes, Mayor, because that is exactly why I included increased awareness of domestic violence and family crisis issues during our last planning session, because one of the most underreported crimes are domestic violence and family violence. And that continues to happen. You know, you might have a theory that we're having lower reported rates of theft and things like that, but we know for certain that the rates of domestic violence are incredibly high and underreported to law enforcement. And when I say that I support adequate number of public safety personnel, I want to get into the most vulnerable parts of our community and make sure that their safety needs are addressed. Sure, we can hire a load more public safety personnel, new sheriff deputies to police our commercial centers, and I still don't have an answer as to how many sheriff's deputies we need to stop theft in our commercial centers. My priority over safety in our commercial centers is the physical violence that people experience in families that I see happening in my own neighborhood. So if you and I want to work together on this, rather than the mudslinging and the political posturing and painting the rest of your colleagues out to be people who are against public safety, if you want to work together on this and be effective, you've been in this position on the council for quite some time. There have been lots of opportunities to advocate and bring forth the data and work with the sheriffs. Let's see that happen. And you will have my partnership in that advocacy, especially if we're able to specialize our law enforcement and make sure that we're responding to the underreported crime of domestic violence that's happening in our community. Am I concerned about what's happening in our commercial centers? Yes. And Mayor, you know as well as I do that legislative advocacy and policy has a big role to play in that. I know a lot of us have been learning more about the reforms to Prop 47, for example. So when we consider what personnel are needed, we have to look at not only the burden of the sheriffs that are on the street, which I support our sheriff's deputies, and I understand that having more personnel will lighten the burden for all of you. And I think that that's important. And I think a lot of departments feel that way, but especially when it comes to public safety, having more support is really important. And so I want to be here to support our deputies in having that conversation. But we also have to consider, how can we use policy to reduce crime and reduce recidivism of crime? So that's where I'm really glad we're including something about having multiple strategies to improve public safety. And I will do everything I can to ensure adequate number of public safety personnel.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore again that show me the data. Let me know. I'm here to support our public safety, which is why I've spearheaded a lot of different initiatives, and I've asked for a comprehensive strategy to reduce crime for years. I understand that the Safety Commission is reviewing it. It's going to come back to the council. But it's just, I think it's just like, I am not so focused on getting the Deputy Sheriff's Association endorsement that I'm just always going to go to bat for, we need 10 new deputies. We need another deputy. That's why I question a previous captain, because he told me that we didn't need more motor deputies. And we kept, questioning, and we got to a point where we found out, and I think you were really instrumental in that, Mayor, that they work better in pairs, and we only had 3, right? So when these things come up and they make sense, we have to act. Can someone tell us what the current crime rate is in the city of Vista? Who has that information? Because I know
I think it's just a little under 11%, if I'm not mistaken.
And is that a historic low for Vista?
It is a low for like the last 20 years.
So I just want to thank the new majority of this council for improving public safety in a comprehensive way, because until we had a more holistic outlook, we did suffer from more crime. And we have kind of changed. The electorate has changed, and I think I'm the only one up here that has ever received 100% of the vote. So if you want to, sling political things, I'm sure you're going to try real hard to get, someone to run against me and try to beat me. But yeah, my constituents know. They know that it's very difficult for our deputies because they're very busy. And they would rather have a speed hump, which is something you didn't even vote for. So anyways, I'm good.
Mayor,
Yep.
council.
No, I think the community is well aware of where each of us stand on this issue.
Okay,
Thanks
so
for the
can we-
conversation.
Can we move ahead?
Let's
Mayor,
do it.
Mayor and council. I mean, we spent, just as a reminder, and unless my timing's off, about an hour and a half on 2 items. We've got 6 items to go. And so I'm just
got all night.
reminding the council, and I understand, trust me, I understand the issue with issues surrounding public safety, but I do want to remind us that, the focus is to get our goals established for the next couple of years here. Next one is fiscal
Our
responsibility.
core values as a city, nothing's more important.
Yes, sir. Well spoken, Mayor. The fiscal responsibility area. In this area, a number of the discussions with the council, not only with the council on Zoom, but also on your surveys was, let's look at a change in the maintaining the emergency reserve requirement. In talking to staff yesterday, the Government Finance Officer Association recommends a range of 25 to 35% for your reserve requirement. That's within a range. We're recommending that the council consider that. With that being said, each year, as you did, I think this year, or I think it was this year, there was 15 million allocated from your that was allocated for special projects. So that can happen any year, as long as you're the bottom of that. It's at least 25% is available in the reserve. The CalPERS item C was an item that was added by staff. I think it's a very prudent item considering pension issues in this country. I commend the manager, the assistant manager, and the department directors for adding that, which is a pension reserve looking at least 1 to 1.5 years, and it would be in a trust. Those are the 2 items recommended, Mayor and Council. I'm turning it back to you for discussion.
The staff, when we had this discussion about reducing our emergency reserves from 35%, brought this idea of a range. A range is a singular number, which is the lowest of the numbers in that range. It's folly to think that we won't automatically go to the lowest number because the appetite for new spending projects is endless. So I do not support a range. I support a number. That number is the bottom threshold. The range is any amount greater than that. We were at 35%. We've moved down to 30%, correct? And I believe that we should stay at 30%, so I would support that this number is fixed at 30%. Listen, we were in budget deficit for 7 years in a row, and Patrick Johnson wrote a 1-page letter and put it on the front page of our budget. I campaigned against deficit spending. We had a structural deficit. Somebody suggested to me that a structural deficit wasn't so bad. And I said, geez, I don't have any idea what a structural deficit is. So I looked it up. It's a financial term that means that we planned to spend more money every year than we planned to take in revenue. And I went back to that person. I said, geez, that's the worst kind of deficit we could possibly have. During the Great Recession, we had to go to our employees and ask them to take a voluntary pay cut, or we would have to implement layoffs. Now, I wasn't here at the time. That was a council that was previous to all of us. But I would suggest that we should focus on being a city that has sufficient reserves. We've got a neighboring city right now that's having budgetary crisis. We have multiple neighboring cities that have budgetary crisis. Because we have focused and made fiscal responsibility a core value of this city, we are sitting here right now in great shape. But I am telling you, if we don't continue to prioritize it, we are going to be in the same position as several of our neighbors right here on the 78 corridor. We have 3 cities on this 78 corridor that are looking at financial crisis right now. We are a shining example. We need to maintain at least 30%, and this needs to be a core value of this council. So now I'll go to Deputy Mayor Melendez.
So thank you, Mayor. If this is the recommendation, I'm supportive of this range. I know we've had previous discussions about it. I think that there was a lower range suggested under suggested additions, and I don't think I would be supportive there. I also just want to make a comment about spending. A lot of the projects, or as the mayor called them, pet projects that we've identified in the community are typically one-time projects, capital improvement projects that completely transform and improve a neighborhood. They're not ongoing expenses and ongoing burdens to the taxpayer. They are a return of the investment of the taxpayer back to the public. And I think that that's a really big component of fiscal responsibility that I had campaigned on, which is to get more community involvement in our decision making and to allow for a greater investment of our public funds into our public infrastructure. And again, one-time costs with the political will to do it completely transforms and improves a neighborhood. And we'll get to that with a cleaner vista, right? And some of the beautification that we have and the potential that we have to make our neighborhoods better. So I am very, very pleased that we're sitting where we're at right now. And I think as we move forward, we're going to look at economic opportunities, revenue increases, and what we can do to continue to make Vista a shining star on this 78 corridor.
So do you support the 30% number, or you want to see the 25% number? Okay, Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I'm good with no range. I actually was, I think I was probably do we need a 35%? I like just reserves at 30%. I was opposed to going to 35. I actually was, I'm glad we have reserves though. But yeah, I think 30% is a good number. If we find that that's too high, next time we go back to these, that's fine. But I agree with the mayor. If we have a range of 25 to 35%, that kind of gives too much fluctuation on what people can do with the budget, and trying to maintain it at 30% is more realistic in my, opinion. So I'd say keep that at 30%. The CalPERS pension reserve obligation, great job, staff. Love that you added that. So I approve of all three of these things, just minus the range with a solid number of 30%. I think that's adequate, and future councils can look at lowering that if they'd like to, but decreasing 5% now I think is not a bad thing to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Contreras.
I actually don't mind the range, but I wouldn't mind a range of 30 to 35. So I know I'll agree
I'll second
with you.
that.
Oh, if the council wants 30, that's fine. I think I personally like the flexibility of a range. I know that any council can just change this, but yeah. So other than that, thank you so much for adding CalPERS in there, and yes to maximizing the return on city investments. I think. I don't know if this would go under fiscal responsibility, but one of the ways that we've been able to bring a lot of projects online, and some that haven't come to fruition yet because it takes forever, but they will be sooner rather than later, hopefully, is that we've been able to get a lot of funding through the state and federal government. This council has been very active in lobbying our higher ups on the totem pole. So, does it make sense under fiscal responsibility to also say, try to get more grants? I don't know. We've focused a lot on that on the council, trying to get more and more grant funding. So I think it'd be nice for it to maybe stand out. I mean, that's part of our fiscal responsibility is we don't have to spend, not all of this money is from Vista. We get to get it from the state and federal government. So I would appreciate, seeking more grant funding, I think is a great way to put it. So thanks.
I agree
Just
with
to
that.
clarify, maintain emergency reserves 30, did we agree 30 to 35%?
Well, there was a
Range.
suggestion, which I agreed with, but let's hear from Councilmember O'Donnell.
Sounds good.
We haven't yet. Listen, I would not like to see it lower than 30, so I'm okay with the sliding scale of 30 to 35%. My reason behind that is probably very similar. Whether it's a soft landing or not, I do believe that we are in an economic financial downturn. I don't, whether it's a deep recession or not, I feel like we are going to be there sometime in the near future. And I promised all of our staff that I would never put them in a situation where we asked them to take a pay cut or lay them off. And so to have that security there to ensure that doesn't happen is why I would like to see the higher end of that scale. That's really it. I mean, I want to comment on the pet projects. So just so we're aware, those pet projects are community investments. I still get phone calls about the Madigual Park that we're going to put in. I just got a phone call literally yesterday from a resident where there's going to be a stoplight put in. That whole neighborhood is grateful. So I'm not against building better infrastructure or putting in projects that are going to improve the community. I understand your point, but many of these things were much needed for a very long time. So, but to answer your question, 30 to 35% sliding, I'd be fine with.
For the record, I don't count that park among the pet projects because we made that a goal of the council to acquire and build more parks. That was something we said as a council should be a high-level goal. So for the record, that project would not meet my definition.
And traffic safety falls under there too, and a stoplight helps.
With warrants, yes.
Yes. Yes. So-
Any other comments on this before we express our consensus on these items? Seeing none,
So it sounds like mayor and deputy mayor, council members, we're okay with the 35 range. You're okay with the CalPERS from staff?
Yes.
I see that. Seek more grant funding?
yes.
Yeah. Good. So we're good to go. Let's move to.
And in fact,
Thank
just
you. Let's
last
move-
comment on that, because we haven't had we haven't asked this question, but we should ask, and it's a very good question you raise. Would we benefit from having a second grant writer? I mean, what's our return on investment on our grant writer? Probably the highest return on investment employee we have. I don't know. I mean, is that something that we should consider for another time? It's a rhetorical question at the moment. Let's go to the next item.
So we are, Mayor, the next item, Mayor and Council and Deputy Mayor, is a cleaner vista. And there was only one item that came out of the surveys and my discussions with the council on that was to implement beautification projects in neighborhoods that are neglected. So identifying those areas where, that we need to provide. That was the only recommendation there.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you. If we can go back for 2 seconds, I think it's important that we have shovel-ready projects to receive grant funding. So any projects that we can create that are shovel-ready, that allow us to have a better opportunity to receive those grants, I think should be added in there.
I almost feel like that's part of it, right? That's kind of implied. Because if we're going to get more grant funding, but I don't mind putting it in there.
Yeah,
Can I make a suggestion? That might be more appropriate under you have an economic, I think you have an economic development.
I'm open to wherever it fits best.
I thought there was there is an economic development focus area. There may be better because
either one.
I'd almost put like a semicolon there and say,
okay.
with priority on shovel-ready projects or something.
Okay. I mean, we can leave it there too.
If I could, I have
You guys, council okay with that?
Yes, I have a supportive thought of that. So I was thinking about this in regards to fiscal responsibility. We have seen grant opportunities slip by because we haven't had shovel-ready projects. We've seen the elongation of timelines because we haven't had shovel-ready projects. So it would be for the purposes of fiscal responsibility to have adequate planning, i.e. a shovel-ready project, in the pursuit of a grant application.
Okay, excellent.
Good. Sounds like we're all in consensus there.
Excellent. So cleaner vista. We have only one addition there.
Is there anybody that wants to speak, or on Cleaner Vista, are we all in agreement on these recommended changes? If we're all in agreement, can we all raise our hand? Or would somebody like, I have Deputy Mayor Melendez, do you want to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. I like the idea of a cleaner vista. I'm glad that we've had increased litter cleanup activities. I believe I might have included the beautification projects in neighborhoods. And it really got me thinking that when we're talking about a cleaner vista, a lot of times we're really talking about a more beautiful vista. So what are our thoughts on updating this goal to reference a more beautiful vista and continue the cleanup activities and also implement some of those beautification projects in neighborhoods that are looking a little bit sullen, and it's not necessarily always about cleaning up trash, but sometimes it's about enhancing those neighborhoods. So that was my thought on this item.
How about a cleaner, more beautiful vista? Would you be okay with that? And maybe we could suggest an item that maybe Councilmember Contreras and I would agree on focusing on zero tolerance for graffiti. Councilmember Contreras.
Awesome. Yeah, I think having beautiful in there, I think, is important. And one of the things on here, or that's not on here, which I don't know if it fits or not, but when I think of a more beautiful vista, I think about, pocket parks and pocket forests and native plants and pollinator habitats. And when I think about that, like, how do I put that in a sentence? Really, it's enhancing the public right-of-way where possible. So if my council is supportive of that, I would love to add enhance the public right-of-way where possible.
So clarification on that.
Sure.
When enhance the public right-of-way, in what terms? I mean, enhance is a pretty broad.
I actually think we could probably have a further discussion on that, and I would imagine there's probably actually consensus for that.
Okay.
But we're having significant conversations about that topic. I think probably we share an understanding of what that means. Do we agree to that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've talked a lot about it in different ways.
Could you, on B, after blight, comma, could you insert graffiti, comma? Any other comments on any of these items, or are we all in consensus on all these items?
We're in
any other
consensus.
comments?
I just want, when it says, I'm going to throw you a curveball real quick. I'm so sorry. So where it says eliminate visible blight, graffiti, junk debris, graffiti that is, so there's, I feel like it's, what do you call it? Like, not authorized graffiti, because I don't want to put a blanket statement and just say graffiti is bad. It is an art form and we have it downtown, and I don't want, I mean, this is like an extreme, but I don't want people to get in trouble for having an art form, or for them to think that the city of Vista is not supportive of this art form. So,
You want to put the word illegal graffiti? Everybody knows what, let's just say illegal.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think
if
it's an important distinction.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Okay, are we all in agreement by show of hands on all these items? We can move to the next item.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Next one is climate and environment, and there was only one change recommended there, which is B should be, you've joined this Joint Powers Authority, so it was to ensure high enrollment in our Joint Powers Authority. You want to make sure that you have high enrollment in that. That was the only change recommended.
If you just pull that microphone closer to you, we'll hear you better.
Is it? Can you hear me, Mayor? Is that better?
Yeah,
or-
we hear you better when the microphone's closer to you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
I would just fully supportive of all the things here. If we could change Joint Powers Authority specifically to Clean Energy Alliance, which is the Joint Powers Authority that we are a part of now, that would be most accurate.
So are we okay with this one? Thank you, Mayor, for that change.
Let's see. Councilmember Contreras, did you want to be heard on this? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like I love the idea of community gardens, but I kind of want to expand that more. It's not just community gardens, but also like the pocket forests and the things that I talked about before. But I wonder if there's a better way to even say that, because there's climate and environmental responsibility. So maybe it's pursue grant funding for climate and environmental responsibility instead of just like the one focus on community gardens. I don't know if you all are amendable to that. I would love to see
Pursue grant funding for climate.
and environmental responsibility. Yeah, so it's just a little bit more broad.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
So I would suggest, as we're removing community gardens there, to take it down to F and say create more tree canopies, community gardens, pollinator gardens, pocket parks, etc.
Any other comments? Seeing none. Councilman.
I just really appreciate that, Deputy Mayor, so thank you.
Okay, is there consensus on all of these items? Okay, we
Excellent.
can move to the next one, Parks and Recreation.
Next one, Mayor, Parks and Rec. And under that one, there was one change to, instead of identify, prioritize potential land for acquisition. And the other, there was a question from one of the council on active maintenance and cleaning of restrooms, and that's an operational issue. Staff is more than happy to have an agenda item on a future council session on that. But the change in terms of your goals was to prioritize potential instead of identify, really prioritize the potential land that you're going to purchase for parks.
I actually think that we should add E, and we should say prioritize cleanliness and state of good repair of our parks. And facilities. Councilmember Green?
I wanted to see if my council would be okay with increasing awareness and accessibility to city-funded scholarship programs for youth. So we have funding that has come to us through our cannabis program, and then also just funds that we've allocated in our year-end fund balance. So increase awareness and accessibility to city-funded scholarship programs. You can even say city-funded youth scholarship programs. I didn't get to play any sports growing up, Mike, because I couldn't afford them, and they didn't have any grant programs at this city. And it was only like $79 to play football back in the day, and now it's like $350 and keeps increasing. So making sure that the residents that we have are aware that it's not only here, but it's accessible for them, I think is a really important thing. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Donnell?
So when it comes to the maintenance of our facilities, I believe that we already have a program that we'll be implementing that, and maybe the city manager can speak to this. I want to keep it on there. I just want the public to know that we do. I think we're going to try and implement a program that will.
Well, we're going to bring back bathrooms and the topic of maintenance of our bathroom facilities as a discussion item in a future meeting.
Perfect.
Councilmember Contreras?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious, this might be too far into the weeds. I'm just curious if there's a appetite to increase the number of dog waste facilities. That's a huge thing that I hear from my constituents. And I think that would fall under Parks and Rec. Yeah. The bags and the trash can.
I feel like that would fit well under cleanliness, state of good repair. Councilmember Green?
I agree with that. I think prioritizing cleanliness and supply of pet waste management materials. Sorry, I was just looking for the word, pet waste management materials.
No,
That's the thing.
I feel like we have those bags, and people pick the dog poop up, they put it in the bag, and when no one's looking, they throw the bag in the weeds. I almost wish they would just leave the poop alone instead of bagging it, because now it's an environmental, somebody's got to go pick that up. Anyway, that's an unfortunate behavior that a lot of people engage in. Does anybody else have anything? Do we get, Councilmember Green, do we get your thought properly encapsulated here, or do you want to?
Yeah, I got completely sidetracked when you started talking about dog poop, so if it comes back, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Okay.
Apologize.
So Mayor,
Are we all in consensus on all the items here? We can even move on?
yeah, there was one item that was mentioned earlier, and Imelda reminded me on arts and culture under this area. Sorry.
May I be recognized?
Please.
So yeah, that was what I was talking about. So implementing, and this kind of goes in line with what Councilmember Green's saying, just programs as far as arts and cooking classes and different things that we used to have here in Vista that I believe that we should bring back would be important, I think, for the community to be able to enjoy.
I remember now.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not allowed to ride bikes in our parks. Like, we don't have bike racks in our parks, and our municipal code mandates that you can't ride bikes in parks. And I mean, I just feel like maybe we should have bike racks in our parks, and maybe you should be able to ride your bike around our parks. I don't know, like, if that's an operational issue, but I just wanted to bring that forward, that, like, we just found out from, like, our students that came in here that there's no bike racks at any parks, and you can't ride your bike at a park. So just throwing that out there.
So I would suggest to the council on a nonpartisan basis not to mess with that ordinance, lest you have a lot of very unhappy parents, especially those with small children, who get really exercised about that and the safety of the little kids who are walking in the park. And because I've seen this, I'm just saying, it's a hornet's nest. You might not want to make a change there. But the bike racks, so that people can ride their bike to the park,
Bike rack's good. And we can discuss
about bike
municipal
racks.
code changes at a future council meeting. I just wanted to make sure that when we're talking about parks and recs, we want to make sure that we are encouraging people to ride their bikes to our parks, because right now they ride them there and their bikes get stolen. No good.
Okay. So we've added, Councilmember O'Donnell, we've added this item, and for the rest of the councils and deputy mayor and mayor and council's considerations, include arts and cultural programs in D. Is the council okay with that add? Okay. Well, I think we're done with Parks and Rec. Let's move to the next one, which is economic development. And the only change under economic development was to add in B, not just a matter that there's attract new revenue, but also it's a job generator. So that was added in. No, they're really in discussions with the rest of the council, any items that came up under that. Are we okay with that?
The only thing that I might consider adding to this is, we have our downtown ambassador program, which our downtown business owners really like and have reported to us. In fact, I had downtown business owner call me about this morning, about their desire to see it continue. But our program is to have an emphasis on our business corridors and their cleanliness and safetiness so that they're attractive to consumers. I think might be something we might want to consider outlining here. Like maybe E could be focus on cleanliness and safety in our downtown and Paseo Santa Fe corridor. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
If I could, there we go. For item C, advance equity through workforce development and education. So I'm going to bring in one of the items from our legislative advocacy platform that we did earlier this year, and suggest that we make C state advance equity through workforce development, education opportunities, and childcare resources.
So we've added two additional items. The council concurrence on, I see nods.
Yeah, we just see buttons up here that you don't see, people.
Yeah, Councilmember Green, do you want to be heard?
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to say item number A on here, continue to implement the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Super excited for that, Larry. I can't wait to see the Economic Development Strategic Plan as it unfolds and kind of how we're helping our businesses develop and attract new businesses. So kind of like our strategic plan to address homelessness. I look forward to reviewing that at some point in time prior to the year being up. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, I don't see any other buttons pushed, so with that, we all in concurrence on all these items for economic development. I would suggest by their silence, that means yes. Let's go on to the next item.
Yes, sir. Mayor, at your direction we move. Last item, I think, traffic. And we're at 2 hours, which is good. We're at 2 hours. So the items under...
This is really good for us, by the way.
Yeah, we moved a number of items from the first goal under this one. One was to C, which was to implement Vision Zero initiatives. Another was to evaluate strategies to prevent traffic from cutting through neighborhoods. So those were the two that were added. I do have to admit that I had to look, the council member that recommended Vision Zero, I learned something that day. I had to go on Google search and look it up, but it's a pretty cool initiative. And I understand that you're already, there's a work session. If my understanding from staff yesterday, they're going to be bringing an agenda item to the council on that.
I would just point out, let's see, we'll go to Councilmember Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you. I think, Mike, when we spoke about this, one of the just items that came up as we were chatting was the neighborhood electric vehicles. That might be more of like a specific program, that maybe falls under, I don't know if it falls under anything here. So I'm hearing a suggestion from Councilmember Contreras, but neighborhood electric vehicles and other like smaller modes of public transportation, maybe those are one of the strategies we can include. So maybe we can add an item E, and as a placeholder, we can say neighborhood electric vehicles. But I think our representative on NCTD might have some suggestions on how we can actually tie that into our traffic goals. Thanks.
Can we
Councilmember
say,
Green.
would that be evaluate neighborhood electric vehicles, consider yeah.
She said as a placeholder.
Just a
we'll hear some other
placeholder, I
input
see.
on that item.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you. When it comes to item number D, I was just wondering if the verbiage on that we could change a little bit, if okay with my council. I thought that it would read better to say, evaluate strategies to improve neighborhood traffic calming and prevent cut-through traffic. So evaluate strategies to improve neighborhood traffic calming and prevent cut-through traffic. And prevent cut-through traffic. Fantastic. And then I look forward to hearing Councilmember Contreras give us wisdom on autonomous vehicles and the first and last mile and everything she knows.
I don't see Councilmember Contreras' button lit, but if she, okay, well, Councilmember Contreras then.
All right. Isn't this exciting? We're at the last item. I love, Deputy Mayor, I love that you brought up neighborhood electric vehicles. One of the things that necessitates, and I've talked about it a lot, is we need to reduce speeds on our streets. Neighborhood electric vehicles or low-speed vehicles, the little golf carts, they can only operate on streets that are 35 miles per hour or less. So perhaps what we do is we move up subset above the neighborhood electric vehicle. We had a council meeting where we looked at AB 43, which is reducing speeds. So maybe it is to implement AB 43 and reduce speeds where appropriate. And then, when it comes to some other things that I see cities do is they have like even shared bicycles, right? So it's like City of Encinitas, it's called shared micromobility. That also does include scooters, which some people are really against. But maybe it is, maybe it's something to the effect of increasing mobility options. So, yeah, because I feel like that would capture something to that effect would capture providing, maybe neighborhood electric vehicles and microtransit, maybe, some shared e-bikes in the downtown area to connect people from area A all the way to area C, whatever the case might be. We can have different strategies under that, but I think increasing the mobility options is going to be important, especially for folks that end up aging out of the ability to drive. And we're seeing that our population is, there's a trajectory for that. So anyways, other than that, I think this is great.
Councilmember Green. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Love that idea. I think it's fantastic. Councilmember Green, I was the one that had brought up cut-through traffic because it's still, I think it's in all of our neighborhoods. I think everybody receives phone calls, emails, and whatever about it. So I love the improvement to that. I do apologize. I want to go back really quick because I believe we need to do a comprehensive review of outdated codes as well as ordinances specific to our business community. And I believe that would fall under economic development. I don't know if anybody wants to change the verbiage on that, but that would be my.
We can go back. Is the council okay with this one on traffic before we
We're
move
not
back?
done with that just yet.
Okay, I'll bring that back in a
Councilmember
second.
O'Donnell, what is it you're trying to do?
I want to do a comprehensive review to eliminate or alter outdated codes and ordinances specific to our business community.
With respect, I'm not sure I understand.
So an example would be where Barrel and Stave used to be. They had put in an $80,000 golf simulator, and every 3 weeks, I think, they had to submit another $200 to put a sign out in front of their building to advertise that they had it there. I think that's antiquated. I actually think it's a redundancy and a waste. However, I am open to hearing from our not right now, our city manager at a later time, but I believe that things like that need to be reviewed. I've also had a lot of discussions with Burtech Family Vineyards and their A-frame signs. I want to have a review of what that looks like, because I know that they're allowed in the downtown area with certain permits and different things, and just see if there's anything we can do to amend or make it acceptable.
So I think that would be a really appropriate discussion item, but I think it's so broad that I'm not sure that we can encapsulate it.
So the great thing about the goal setting tonight, as Mike has mentioned, we are meant to leave it broad and then narrow it down as we go.
Just a point of clarification, are the issues that you're concerned about primarily related to signage, or are there other
No,
areas you want us
there
to
are going to be other
explore?
areas that we'll explore, and we can dive into it as well.
If I can, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, council members, that is in doing strategic plans with other communities around the country, that is a major strategic issue in terms of looking at any outdated codes or other regulations that impede development, that impede, customer service. So it's not something that's inconsistent. Just wanted to mention that.
Well, I'm just not sure that the signage ordinances are necessarily outdated.
I'm giving examples, right? But
No, I appreciate that. Almost all of our codes are many decades old. Some of them we inherited from the county. There are a lot of them. I just don't know how it lacks specific meaning to say outdated, because it's in the eye of the beholder is all I'm saying. So I think we should bring those things back and let's have those conversations. But to put it in the goals, it doesn't matter, because it's kind of
they're just goals, Mayor. We're trying to achieve a better access for our business and development in our communities. So that is the end goal.
Then make that the goal, what you just said right there.
Through the review of ordinances and code. No, yeah,
That's fine. Include that then. Yeah. Improve access and
I don't remember what I just said. I'll tell you what, it's on video. We'll go back and we'll update.
But to be clear, Mayor, for the gist of what the councilman's saying, I do understand where he's going. I
understand where he's going too, but I like that verbiage he just used, which is basically improve, I don't know what business access means, but, improve the success of our businesses through the review of codes to determine,
That sounds good, and then we'll go back and update it. I'll go back and watch the video as soon as I'm home.
We're trying to
email John and Imelda.
get this language perfected right now. That way, because one of the things that's happened in years past is, the staff goes back and tries to massage this again, and then it comes out like the telephone game doesn't, which is why we wanted to try and get the exact language agreed to.
Before I leave this building, I will go back and watch this meeting, and I will send Imelda and our city manager the exact verbiage I
Let's
used.
finish with the traffic item, and then let's come back and let's just knock this out.
Okay.
That way we're done with it, and we walk out of here when this document's finished. 'Cause
Sounds good.
that's the goal here, is to have this document finished when we walk out of here. That way we all agree what the words were.
It looked like the city manager wanted to say something, but.
We'll go back to it.
Okay.
What does it say where it is right now? We're here. Let's knock it out. Improve success of businesses through review of codes. Is that sufficient? Yeah. That encapsulates what because that means more to me as the reader of it than calling something antiquated, because what is antiquated to you may not be antiquated to me. Could be. It could be. We just, okay, we all agree to that. Let's go.
I appreciate
So,
the
okay,
workshop.
I think we're almost to the end here. I'm going to add something that I may get one agreement with. I don't expect to get much agreement with. I don't agree with the direction we've been headed as a city to restrain traffic. We did surveys about 7 years ago. There were empirically valid surveys done by a city manager. People said they wanted to be able to get home not only safer, but also faster. People have long complained about the time that it takes to get from point A to point B. So what I would like to put as item G, and we'll see if we get agreement with it, is to improve the throughput of our arterial roadways and improve travel times. Okay. Do we have agreement on everything but that item? Please, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
My conflict with item G, to improve the throughput of arterial roadways and improve travel times, it does not necessarily serve the residents of Vista. It very often serves cut-through traffic, which we identified in a previous goal that we're trying to mitigate. So I'm concerned that if we focus on improving the throughput of arterial roadways, the residents of Temecula will benefit, the residents of Oceanside will benefit, but not necessarily the residents of Vista. So that would be my only criticism there.
So I actually strongly disagree with you. I think that when you put 9 roundabouts on Emerald and 2 on Beaubier, I think people are going to start cutting through that we're using our arterial roadways are now looking for neighborhood streets to use as pathways. So I actually think that you're encouraging people through what you're doing to find those larger neighborhood roads and to use them so it's a difference of opinion. I didn't expect you to agree with me, but I do not think that our residents want Melrose speed limit altered, and I do not think that they wanted the number of lanes of travel on Melrose reduced. We actually reduced the number of traffic accidents during the 5 years that we had increased the number of lanes. I don't think that our residents want 11 new roundabouts, and I just want this here so that you can take it off, so that voters know who's for getting home a little bit faster and safer, and who's for road diets. I'm not for all these road diets, and it's a critical thing that voters care about, and I just want voters to know where each of the 5 of us are on the issue of slowing everything down. So was there, let's see, I have Councilmember Contreras wanted to speak on this.
It's really interesting. I get to talk to a lot of my neighbors who have been wanting for a long time to implement traffic calming in their little respective nook of Vista. And in speaking to them about where they live, they always complain about the arterial road right next to them that is unsafe. I think that there's just not enough, I don't want this to sound like condescending, but there's not enough education as to what happens when you do put roundabouts and you do have traffic calming. If you look at the traffic studies, for example, on Beaubier, I let people know, hey, do you want to get home 17 seconds faster and have children not protected at all in this area where there's an elementary? Or would you rather have an inconvenience of 7 to, I think the biggest delay was like 21 seconds or something like that, and have a situation where we are able to make it easier for folks on either side There's a lot of density on either side of these roads, and they don't get to walk freely. They don't get to interact. They don't get to easily go to the neighborhood grocery store. And a lot of folks, once they go through and they see the data, they're like, okay, I understand. So I disagree with the idea that folks don't want to see this. Now, the folks that don't want to see it can be really loud. So I know it's easy to pay attention to them. But there's a ton more that are ready to move forward and just have a more connected and safer Vista. And when cars are traveling super fast because you've expanded it to a freeway size, that has not made people safer. That has, I have to hear my constituents who, and you heard them, they came here. A woman 9 months pregnant, having to watch someone die in her front yard off Melrose. I walk that stretch a lot. I've taken a lot of videos because it's crazy. You're walking and there's huge SUVs coming right next to you. I had to hit the hood of a car just 2 weeks ago because they would not stop going while it was my turn to walk at a controlled intersection. And once I did that, he got startled, right? He was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see you. This happens every single time I walk. I notice it to another person is having an issue, or I have an issue. And people do see me everywhere. I actually use Vista. I use Vista restaurants and grocery stores. I walk there, I take the bus. When we get our protected bike lanes, I'm gonna finally get a bike because I used to ride my bike all the time in Santa Barbara and was looking forward to doing that here and couldn't do it. It's unsafe. I wanna live. Some people don't have the choice though. And so I just disagree with that. The roundabouts actually made it faster in certain scenarios too on the Beaubier traffic study than having controlled lights. So anyways, it's totally a difference of opinion, but I've heard it loud and clear from my constituents and from people in everybody's district, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually agree with you, Mayor, believe it or not, on this. So when we're talking about arterial roads, I'm talking about Santa Fe, Sycamore, Melrose, Vista Way, and Beaubier. Every single one of those roads, except for a spot of Santa Fe that does not have sidewalks, does have bike lanes. We're putting protected bike lanes in. They have sidewalks already. And Vista Way, Beaubier, these arterial roads that we're talking about have adequate infrastructure. Curb and gutter, protected bike lanes we're putting in. We've done a whole lot. So I feel like this is something I've been called upon, and I'm sure, Mr. O'Donnell, if you haven't had somebody call you sitting on Melrose, or Deputy Mayor sitting on Melrose over there, like just, hey, it takes forever. If you're leaving from Rancho Buena Vista High School and you're trying to get your kid at Vita Middle School, that is the worst drive after 3 o'clock that you can possibly make in Vista on Melrose. And I'm not saying improve speed, okay, or increase speed, but I do feel like as a council, we should make it a priority to improve safety and traffic flow in our arterial roadways to improve travel times. And if we're improving safety and traffic flow at the same time, that's something that we should be able to get behind. We've already put protected bike lanes, so we should have. So I think that improving the throughput, I didn't even know what throughput necessarily was, but I know traffic flow. And I think if we're improving safety and traffic flow on our arterial roadways to improve travel times, that is across the board. It's freedom of movement, like my deputy mayor likes to say, is whether I'm riding a bike or I'm walking or I'm driving, I want to have the traffic flow safely. no matter what the form of traffic is necessarily. So I think leaving that on there as item G and saying improve safety and traffic flow on our arterial roads. We already said that we're going to evaluate our strategies to improve traffic calming and prevent cut through traffic. Therefore, when these people are going through our neighborhoods, we're already evaluating strategies to have them avoid that. So if our arterial roads are safe and they flow smoothly, whether it's your ideas and my ideas of stoplights that I love more than traffic circles, or maybe a dual roundabout, because what your problem, which mine is constricting the traffic flow and getting it down to one lane back open. And we've had issues on Melrose with parking where we've put it down to 2 lanes and back to 3. Melrose may be better as a 2-lane road. Oh my gosh, maybe better, who knows? But from a traffic flow perspective, that's what we need to improve, and we need to improve it in conjunction with safety. You can't look at one side or another. So if the mayor would be okay with that amendment, I think saying improving safety and traffic flow on our arterial roadways to improve travel times is a good way to present it to the community, and it's going to be more palatable to our body because it encompasses everything we're looking for.
I'm 100% okay with that change. I would just point out when you say separate subject, because you said we're not sure whether or not Melrose would be safer as 2 lanes or 3. I just want to point out that we do have 5 years of data at 3 lanes, and we also have the previous 5 years where it was at 2 lanes, and the number of accidents was reduced when we went to 3 lanes.
So data may be
empirically,
there.
The data demonstrates clearly that motorists were safer at 3 lanes. Now, this council has taken the action to reduce it again to 2. I just want to point that out.
Exactly. And like I say, we'll see as we're improving safety and traffic flow on those roadways what the best way is and what the best way the council as a body agrees to. Like I said, there's no one way to do it right, but there is a one way as a council to agree, and that is that our roads should be safe and they should flow smoothly. And if those 2 things are happening, we're all high-fiving all around. Thank you.
Sounds good. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. That was great. So, Mayor, I just want to highlight one thing that you had said, that no one on Melrose wants speed reduction, but I know that both you and I have been on emails from people on Melrose and Sycamore saying that they are tired of people speeding down. But I understand your point because not everybody wants it. So I just want to be clear. But on Sycamore, I have people complain all the time about the speeds. In fact, just recently somebody had asked me when we were bringing that to the council to have the discussion. It's mostly the adjacent neighborhoods along those corridors that do want reduction in speed because they feel it's going to be safer. You know, there's traffic lights there, and people speed through them all the time, even when the lights are red. And that was a really large complaint in one specific area along Sycamore. But I'm trying to remember the words that you used. But there's a saying that I've heard, and it's, you know, the 3: cheap, good, fast. You can only pick 2, right? So if you want to get home fast, you know, or what is it? If you said people want to get home safe, quickly, and on time, you're probably not going to get all 3, right? So safe and quick, or safe and on time, whatever it might be. But my point of that is there have been a tremendous increase in people complaining about speeds, specifically on South Melrose. And so for me, I would disagree with the point you made that nobody wants it. Because not only are they speeding down Melrose, but they're also cutting through neighborhoods, which is why I was the one that had originally talked about with Mike, reducing cut-through traffic. Now, how you do both, and I'll admit, because I told this to him as well, I don't have the golden rule or answer on how to fix both. I'm looking forward to the discussion that we have up here, because I think that we all have creative minds on how we can do that. But there is a sincere and severe need to evaluate the traffic, evaluate the speeds, as well as what we're doing off the arterials to keep our communities safe. So I just wanted to bring that point up. I am okay with improved safety and traffic flow on arterial roadways to improve travel times. I think it's broad enough that we can have a larger discussion about it and go from there. So
It's price, quality, and delivery. Those are the 3 things you can
it's
only
the
have.
same. It's just I gave you the watered down version.
Just since you were searching for it. Listen, I think the problem is that some people are conflating the speed that travel moves at when most of the motorists that we represent are on the roads, which is during rush hour, where no one is able to achieve the speed limit. In fact, most people are traveling significantly below it because traffic is moving so slowly. That's one issue. The second issue is people who are speeding during times that are other than during rush hour. It's impossible to speed during rush hour. There's so much traffic on the road. If you can figure out how to move past the people that are in front of you, then you're doing a better job than I am. I can't figure, I mean, we're going 25 miles an hour on a 50-mile-an-hour road during rush hour. The issue of stopping speeding when the traffic is not heavy enough that the road is open, that's a law enforcement issue. And if we lower the speed limit on that road, it's not going to stop people who desire to break the law or willing to break the law and willing to. My back door goes right up to Shadow Ridge Drive. All night long, I hear motorcycles and other people tearing down Shadow Ridge Drive. And I wish that we had enough motor deputies that we could have one at midnight to get that motorcyclist with no muffler who goes like, right behind my back door, but we don't. So I think conflating those two things as being relevant, the empirical evidence, when we surveyed the entire city, this is not me asking one neighbor or two or hearing, we did a survey and the residents told us that they wanted the traffic to flow better and they wanted to get home faster. And yes, they want to get home more safely. But I just want us to take those two issues and understand that they are issues that happen literally at different times of the day and under very different circumstances. One where the road is very congested and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to travel above the speed limit. And another when the road is open and people are choosing to use it as the Autobahn. I think we have to deal with those problems differently. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate that you're bringing forward item G, specifically that you're referencing our arterial roadways, because they are a part of our network in Vista. I think my biggest concern was the emphasis of throughput, which I think puts too great of an emphasis on the volumes coming from everywhere and anywhere and not necessarily on satisfaction for our Vista residents. And I completely, I'm glad we're having this conversation about the difference between how traffic moves during those peak times and how traffic moves in those off times. Unfortunately, as much as we want to deal with them separately, those are occurring in the same infrastructure. And I would disagree. It's not just a matter of enforcement. It is a matter of design. There's a lot of studies that indicate that when you design a road so that it's open and expansive and looks like there's nothing stopping you, the driver is going to go really, really fast. And that's dangerous for everyone around them. We're seeing this on areas like West Vista Way. Been working with city staff on developing a more complete streets plan for West Vista Way. It doesn't have to be obstructions, right? Like roundabouts or speed humps that improve the design to reduce speeding. It could even be things like trees that, force the field of vision for a driver to be slightly more narrow so they're not incentivized to speed and see it as this highway. I do not believe in building freeways through neighborhoods. I think that our arterial roadway system have been damaging to a lot of our neighborhoods in a lot of ways. And now our council is forced to do the work of reconnecting those neighborhoods. We have seen historically the automotive industry, for their own profit purposes, lobbying local, state, and federal governments to design roads for the purposes of throughput and not for the purposes of safety and flow. And so I appreciate you, Councilmember Green, bringing that forward. And with this, improving the safety and flow on our arterial roadways, we definitely can do that. And it can happen through enforcement and also happen through design.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the reworking of this, and I support the improving safety and traffic flow on arterial roadways. To improve travel times, I feel like, I could almost lose the after roadways, but yeah, I'm fine with it. And I just want to say, because we had a long conversation when we reduced the amount of lanes on North Melrose, and it's very important to just restate, because it's been brushed over in this conversation, that the types of accidents that happen when we increase the number of lanes became fatalities. that means that person's not alive anymore. So people are tired of seeing people dying in their front yard.
Are we ready?
It looks like
you.
we have consensus on all these items.
On all these items?
Any other comments?
I have one
Councilmember
comment.
O'Donnell.
I have the verbiage, so after we finish this.
Oh,
we can
very good. We're going to
correct
go
it.
back to the previous
Yeah.
one.
So-
Okay, are we agreed to this one? All those in favor? Okay, we're going to go backwards to
Okay,
the
that's
economic
fine.
development one and perfect the language. So what do we have here?
To try and achieve better access for our business and development in our communities through the review of city codes and ordinances. Do you want me to repeat that? I went really fast.
Yeah.
To try and achieve better access.
Yeah, just get rid of to try. Achieve better access.
Achieve, yeah, that's fine.
But what does access mean? I mean, don't we want success for our businesses? I don't know what access means. Like,
Maybe it is. Would that-
makes it easier to get in the front door, or sorry, go ahead.
Again, this is fluid. We can change as we go. I'm going to dictate back and then I'm going to hold the
Apologize.
mic. No comments. Where are we at? Achieve better, okay. Achieve better access for our businesses and development in our communities through, sorry. Review of city codes and ordinances.
Deputy Mayor, did you want to be heard on this?
I like the word success.
Yeah.
I think achieve to, how about to support our businesses? I think updating our municipal code would be a way that we could support our businesses in their success. I like the word success in there. I don't know where it would fit.
Can I just recommend that we go back to the wording as it was before? As much as I know you wanted to get that, what was good, but access doesn't have the specificity of meaning that success does. Councilmember Green.
Sorry, there's a button to push. I like improve success for our businesses and development in our communities through review of city codes and ordinance. So improve
Sounds good.
success for our businesses. So just get rid of achieve better, like improve success for our businesses. Just get rid of the whole achieve better access. There you go. For our businesses and in our communities through review of city codes and ordinances. Fantastic.
But improve the success of our. But improve the success of.
I
our
haven't
businesses.
spoken tonight. Instead of our businesses, all businesses, because our indicates that they're existing, and we want to bring in new businesses.
Our is fine because our includes our future businesses. Our means our Vista businesses. Yeah. Vista businesses. Improve success for Vista businesses.
Could we say ensure success of Vista businesses?
Ensure success.
These are lofty goals.
ensure their success. They're going to fail, bro.
We say ensure elsewhere in this planning document.
We got consensus for improve. Let's
All
bring
right.
this. Let's bring this ship into the port. Improve success for Vista businesses and development in our communities through review of city codes and ordinances.
In our community, it should be just singular.
What do you want?
In our community. So are we okay with we changed communities plural to community singular. Are we okay with this language?
Everybody okay?
Council, Mayor, Council, Deputy Mayor?
Mayor, did you have a comment?
Close, we're okay?
Okay, we're all good? Okay, I think we're all good.
That's all good.
You have lengthy closing remarks? Okay, I would like to thank you, and I'm sure the rest of the council would as well, for the excellent job that you did, both you and Ms. Huerta. Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
This is the presentation section where you can applaud.
Thank you to all of our city staff for the work that they did to support this session. I think this is really important, and I'm going to recommend that citizens watch this meeting because even though it was 2 hours, this is like, you want to know what we believe, what our priorities are. This is it. This is the opportunity. So let's do some closing comments here because I don't think we have any more public comment. We already finished that earlier. So seeing no more public comment, we'll go to Josh Sino-Cruz. Do you have any comments for us? How about our Deputy City Clerk, Callison? No? City Attorney, any more comments for us tonight? All right, I know, all right. City Manager? Thank you very much. Councilmember O'Donnell?
Just want to say, great discussion, everybody. I was glad to have it. Looking forward to achieving our goals.
And Councilmember Contreras?
Yeah, no, thank you. Oh, forgot to press the button. Thank you to Mike and to Melda and to all our staff, and thank you to my colleagues for always having a entertaining and important discussion dynamic for the betterment of Vista. I hope you all have a fantastic night, and I will say that the next time we meet, it will be my birthday. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Councilmember Green?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Two things. Number one, I want to acknowledge Guerras en Acción. I went to see them yesterday, and they said they started at 9 o'clock. And I'll have you know, they were on the road by 8:37. So I brought them breakfast sandwiches and donuts, trying to be sweet, and they were already on the road cleaning trash up at 8:37. So Jovita and the crew carried donuts and breakfast sandwiches the whole time they were like working. It was crazy. So thank them so much for everything they do. They're very consistent. If you want to clean up on a Wednesday, go hang out with them. And last but certainly not least, today is National Burrito Day. We just happen to have the best burrito in America at Santa Ana's in the city of Vista. Get yourself a San Felipe burrito. You can thank me later. Have a great night.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank my council for a great discussion, and I really appreciate one of the things you said, Councilmember Green. You said there's not just one way to do this, and that's what it's all about, is all of us sharing our own perspectives to make something great for our city. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you all. We're adjourned.